Welcome to the Safety Share, a webinar series brought to you by CIM Magazine and the CIM Health and Safety Society. I am your organizer, Michelle Beacom, Managing Editor of CIM Magazine. Today's presentation, Implementing Proximity Detection and Collision Avoidance Technology, is sponsored by Dundee Precious Metals. Just a little housekeeping before we get started. If you joined by computer, please make sure you've selected the computer audio button. If you joined by phone, please make sure you've selected the phone button. If you have any questions during the presentation, select the question mark here and then type your question into the question box. All of these questions will be held until the end of the panel discussion. Just to note that there will be some poll questions, so pay attention. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today. We are excited to be partnering with the Health and Safety Society to be able to bring this series to you. And I'm very happy to have John Treen with us both to host today and to help make this series happen. John is president of Automate Mining and is a practice speaker and advocate for safety and incident prevention through design. Welcome, John.
Thanks, Michelle. And thanks everybody for attending today's webinar. We're very fortunate today that we've got three experienced individuals that have been on different paths of their journey to proximity detection and collision avoidance. And so today we bring to you Millan Herce. Millan is the senior mining engineer and he's the lead for digitization at Glencore's Raglan. He's a mining engineer from Vale University. And for the past 11 years, he's been part of the Raglan team for Glencore. Since 2008, he's had this role of leading digitization, and they've done some great work at Raglan, which he'll share today. Outside of the work at Glencore, he's also chair of the MIA Foncier program, and that's purpose is to oversee training of postgraduate university students. And he's also a member of the Mine Health and Safety Regulation Technical Subcommittee. So Millan will bring a lot of experience both in the work and outside of that to the presentation today. We also have Alex Martial. Alex is part of the Eldorado Eldorado Quebec team. He's electrical superintendent there. He's got a double diploma from Cégep d'Abitibi-Témiscamingue in automation and in instrumentation. He's been in the industry for since 2010, worked at three mines, Glencore as well, at Matagami, Goldcorp Eleanor, and since 2016, he's been at Eldorado in Quebec. He started as an automation coordinator in 2016, and since 2020, he's held this role where he oversees innovation and automation for the team there. So we look forward to his contributions. And finally, Bill Bailey. Bill's the mobile equipment project superintendent at Vale in their Sudbury operations. Bill's a professional that's been in the industry for quite a while. He holds a license in automotive and heavy equipment technician. He began his career in 1998 at Cast Resources, where he was pivotal in bringing in the first teleremote LHD at Vale. He later moved into Vale and held many increasing roles there, up to the role of superintendent, which he holds today. And he spearheaded Vale's implementation of proximity detection systems that's now being used at many of their Canadian mines. So we're fortunate for the three panelists, and they're going to share a wealth of experience. Looking forward to the questions that the audience has at the end of it. But right now, let's jump into it. And again, all three of these panelists, I want to thank you. You've got a passion for safety and innovation, which is seen by the expertise you have and your willingness to share it. So looking forward to the discussions. And maybe Millan, we'll start with you today. There's been talk about collision avoidance and proximity detection in the industry for a while. It's had some uptake. It's been up and down. Maybe you can just go over what are some of the biggest risks you've seen with adoption of collision avoidance? And maybe to back up, maybe start with what's the difference between proximity detection and collision avoidance, just to make sure that our audience is aware of that. So Millan, over to you.
Yeah, thanks. No, it's important to distinguish both. Proximity detection is part of the collision avoidance. So proximity detection will detect the remote object, pedestrian, vehicle, whatever. The collision avoidance will take that information and will take action With your personal car, you could have that. Let's say you want to change a line and there's someone in your blind spot. Well, you got something on your steering that so you have a sensor in your steering, so you cannot turn. Those are intervention from the vehicle. So that's what I call collision avoidance. Or if you arrive at a red light and you're not paying attention and you don't brake, you have the emergency brake triggering the slow down. You see that on modern car, let's say 2019, 2020-ish year car. So same thing for underground. You need the proximity detection, and then the collision avoidance is the control if the driver doesn't take action. Even in proximity detection, there's different level. If you look in 2010 to 2020 in North America, you had mostly the most common proximity detection was what I call the sample detection, which is you detect someone in a bubble, but you don't know which distance. It could be anyone from 10 meter, 30 meter, it could be in front or behind you, but you don't know where. That's what I call the sample proximity detection. And since 2020-ish, we're starting to see a supplier with commercial ready product that gives distance, orientation, and even critical zone. If you're very near the vehicle, will be red. You see some red light behind my screen with the on the hood. That's the red zone. Then you could have yellow zone or green zone. Again, that's how I will define the difference between proximity detection and collision avoidance. And it's by step. You need proximity detection to do collision avoidance. Now, your next question was the biggest concern. Is that say that again? Ask
Just
again your question, John.
what's some of the risks with adopting collision avoidance that you've seen through your experience of what's happened at Glencore?
Well, of course, the effort to install it. It's a big step. Also, typically, when you have a collision avoidance and your basic control, your basic procedure, or your design of the mine, the way you drive, if they're not good, the collision avoidance will just show how bad you are, because the equipment will stop for many times just because, I don't know, you don't have a pathway for the pedestrian to walk, or in our case, for example, in the ramp, we need to leave 30 meter, 100 feet between vehicle. But if you're driving too close, it will stop or slow down. So you need those procedure well established. The other thing that mostly mine director, mine manager are afraid is all the false positive detection that could stop production. I know a mine that has seen a 20% reduction in their performance due to a collision avoidance implementation in South Africa. But that's basically because their basic control were not accurate or not well established. The year after, they gained 20% versus their baseline. But yes, so I'll say that the biggest concern is the false positive and potential risk of production, and the effort to deploy it or to maintain it.
No, thanks, man. And I think you're right. I mean, there's obviously a huge implementation that people have to prepare themselves for with upfront working, and then making sure that once it's in, it's running. And the change management is obviously a big part of that. But Bill and Alex, you probably know better than I do from your sites. Is there anything you'd like to add to some of the risks that you saw with adoption, either at Vale or at Eldorado? Bill?
For adopting the collision avoidance type, so we've trialed it, and we didn't have the success perhaps that other plants have had. But for us, it was trying to control vehicles like that Toyota behind you. without the technology already applied to the equipment to be able to safely to slow down the equipment, to apply the brakes in a progressive manner, we found that it was a lot of a lot of adapting to the equipment that needed to be done. And for us, we saw that as a huge challenge. And the other points you made are all very, very valid for us as well.
Alex, anything to add there?
Yeah, for sure. On our side, it was a pretty new technology, so the reliability of this was our main concern, and we had some issue also because it's new technology, so we need to adapt. And when on our side, when the equipment, the collision avoidance system wasn't working, we parked the equipment. So we got a problem with the production also because when we had when we had the issue, we parked the machine and we wait for the system to be functional before getting back on the production.
Thanks, Alex. And Michelle, maybe just we'll pull up the poll question because we've got 70 listeners on the program now, and you have either done some of this implementation or you've been working on some of this implementation yourself and thinking about it. So maybe in your minds, if you could just fill out the survey, what are the biggest concerns you would have in implementing a collision avoidance system at your site? And just, as they're filling this out, this is one of the things that I think is really important for the industry as a whole, whether it's collision avoidance and proximity detections or other technologies. How do we share more of this with the industry? How do we share our experiences? And so I want to thank, the Health and Safety Society and CIM for allowing these webinars to happen, and thank the audience that comes in to listen to them, to provide questions, and also, future panelists. We want to make sure we continue to bring you safety items and how they're being implemented at other locations and other mines across either Canada or elsewhere in the world. So it looks like, we're going good. The fourth question isn't showing up, so disabling the system by the operator probably won't get many responses as not being seen. But as we're going through these, obviously these are some of the points that are of concern: frequency of stops of the equipment and the fatigue and distraction of the operators. I've been traveling in vehicles that have systems like this in place, proximity and collision avoidance both, and the proximity detection does create quite a bit of alarms and searches. It does get annoying. And the key is, how do you make sure the system's stable and maintained and operable? Because as Alex says, when it does go down, then that puts the piece of equipment out, or people continue to operate, and now you're operating at risk. And so those are some of the big concerns I've seen through implementation. We've got 62% of the audience that voted. Michelle, can you just scroll down, see if there is anything on question 4, or if I've...
It's 18%. I can see it. I don't know why you can't see it.
Okay. I see the three questions, but that's fine. So based on these results, Bill, Millan, Alex, is this what you've seen in your operation, or any insight that you'd want to share on this?
I can start if you guys want. Well, the frequent stop of the equipment, that's why for now, we're implementing only the advanced proximity detection. That's for us the first step. Anyway, we have to do it. Collision avoidance or not, you need that. So that's our step. And after that, we will decide if we need, we'll do a risk analysis and to see what's the gain and effort to implement collision avoidance. Does it worth it? Our goal is to have an answer by 2028, and by 2026 complete the installation of the advanced proximity detection. The fatigue and distraction of the operator, we hire a consultant in ergonomic to understand the cognitive effect on the driver, and there was some very good recommendation, and we're working with our supplier to implement that. And we're also doing that pilot to confirm what we saw during that audit. But I fully agree. Maintenance for a collision avoidance, we're having the same thing on teleremote. On teleremote, sometimes we need to recalibrate the bucket sensor, the steering. We only have 5 loaders. Imagine over 200 vehicle. If you need to recalibrate every 2-3 weeks a sensor, it's just going to be too much effort. That's what I can say.
Thanks, man. All right, well, maybe we'll move on. And obviously there's some concerns with implementation and the collision avoidance system, but there's some benefits as well too. And so, Alex, maybe I'll turn this one over to you. From what you've seen at Eldorado and how it went, why would you think that it was a great implementation, or why mine should implement such a system like this? I mean, maybe if you want to give your thoughts.
Yes, but for now, most incident in underground mine is involve mobile equipment. So whatever any mines, they got near miss, they got collision. This is why safety while driving is one of the health and safety priorities for our side, and everyone, but any mine want to reduce the risk of collision between mobile equipment and workers. The most valuable resource is our workers. So how can we protect them? What technology we can implement to protect them? And I think collision avoidance and proximity detection is one. So they got so much blindside inside those big equipment, and the equipment just get bigger and bigger, and bigger they are, bigger they got some blindside, bigger they got some the operator don't see much what's going around these machines. So on our side, when we got somebody who's a new worker that never been underground, we take the person, we sit inside the machine, so he's able to see, oh, okay, got so much of blindside, to be sure that this person will be able to understand the reality of the operator underground. What they see is they don't see much. With our big machines, 30 meters all around the machine, that you can't see nothing. So those equipment help us to be more efficient on the operator side, because he knows, oh, okay, you got people in the Jeep near at the 45 meter, at 55 meters. So you know, with his his screen inside the machine, that he's not all alone. And because on when he got a LHD in the stove, he travel his road 60 to 70 times a day. So he enter in a auto mode. So we always do the same trip. Those equipment help him with the buzzer, with the lights that came off when he got somebody. Oh, okay, he get out of his routine.
Now, thanks, Alex. And it's interesting you mentioned about, if you have new people come in, you put them in the seat of an LHD to see what it looks like. I remember when I was a young engineer back in the early 90s at Coleman, and one of our safety shares, they brought us underground, the engineering department, and sat us in the seat of a scoop with a loaded bucket, and look around. And from being a young engineer and not realizing how poor the visibility was and how many blind spots there were, to sitting in that seat, it was really eye-opening. And now, 30 years later, the opportunity for the technology to tell the operator somebody's near, so they don't see them blind spots, and for lights to flash with proximity, or to actually apply controls and stops to do that with collision avoidance, I think is the way of the future. It's just, how do you make sure that in implementing it, we overcome some of the risks we just talked about in the polls? Bill and Millan, and you've gone implementation as well in both yours. Is there anything that you thought was really critical of why it should be implemented beyond the safety aspects that Alex had brought up? anything either one of you would like to add?
Do you want to go ahead, Bill?
Yeah, no, I think Milan's points were all very valid. For us at Vale, it was all about the safety and trying to address some of the critical issues or critical incidents that we had been seeing on the rise. And like he spoke about mobile equipment, it's number one for us as well. We see that as a huge issue. So I think Elvis' points were very valid.
I received a question from in another conference, and we're seeing more and more mechanized mine and less pedestrian. Does it still worth it to have a collision avoidance system or a proximity detection system? And like Alexandre just said, is our top three near misses at Raglan. Well, mobile equipment is part of that top three. So near misses with vehicle. Um, you have in the ramp, you don't have a lot of people walking. But on the level, just for example, a jumbo man that gets out of his jumbo to connect to the 600 vault, he's walking for that. And we had a near miss where a truck turned and didn't see the jumbo man. So that's one of the example or showcase. So even in a mechanized mine, you still have people walking, mostly in level or drop point or stope, but that's where you have the biggest risk.
You make a great point, Milan. As we apply the hierarchy of controls in all aspects of safety and risk management, whether it's proximity or other ones, it's thinking about that. And so, here with collision avoidance, you're putting in mechanical means to stop it, but that doesn't mean that you don't do other things around how do you minimize people on main travelways of ramps. That doesn't eliminate the need to have other good engineering and safety practices put in place. It just reinforces and makes that a little bit better. Maybe we'll go back to the audience again with a poll question, Michelle. Mention some of the reasons that these were implemented at the sites of the panelists, but for the audience, what's the most important requirement for you to trial this technology? Is it having business cases showing the benefits of it? Is it more forums like this to discuss what's going on with the technology? Do you need to visit a site and observe the technology yourself, or is this just a technology that you would not trial no matter what? And so as they're putting this in, I think that's one of the things as an industry we're getting much better at. Not each mine, not each operation has to do their own tests, their own trialing. We're very good as an industry to share our successes and our challenges, especially when it comes to safety items. And so continuing to do that, I'll put that out and stress that with everybody out there is if you can and you have that availability, share your experiences, what worked well, what isn't, especially related to safety, so that we can obviously move the industry forward and work on our journey towards zero harm in all aspects of what we do. All right, so as we're getting these results in, looks pretty good, but obviously visiting a site and observing the technology that's been in place going on, I think is very important. I know from experience in some of the projects that I've been on, I think this is very, very beneficial. I know the mine sites are very willing to do this. I know OEMs and suppliers of the technology have their links and can bring them to mines to see them. But maybe I'll ask the three experts that are on here if before you implemented the technology, you went to check it out somewhere else, or do you have people coming in to visit the technology at your site, and how does that go, and what's your perception of that? And so those two aspects, either are you being the tour guide, or you being toured around at another site, maybe provide your experience. Alex, let's turn it to you.
On our side, we had the chance to test. So we'll look at what at this time was on the market, and we compare the boat that we take out. We take out two companies, and we do a run test with the boat with the same test, and we had this chance to look at which one was the better for the workers, which one was better for the efficiency and the reliability. So, but at this time, it was pretty new technology also. So we were like at the beginning of first one to implement those technologies. So it was hard to visit other side, but I think is one of the most important things when vendors, whatever the technology, they got so much technology and the technology goes so well, so quick. When vendors came, the first question I ask is where it works, where I can go see it, and because it's easy for vendors to sell their stock, but is it working as well as we expect? It's always this that the question.
Yeah. And you're right. I mean, ask that question, and that's a tough part of being a pioneer, right, Alex? You can't go see other spots. You're the one that's creating the new path, and you're the one that's
Yeah.
creating that destiny. So thanks for doing that. But you're exactly right. How do you make that happen? And a test is a great way to do it. Bill, Millan, how did your experiences come about for starting this?
So for us, I go next. For us at Vale, so we've been on this journey since 2008 is when we first tried the JAWS product, the proximity detection that we landed on. We walked away from it, but in 2016 when we kicked it off again, there wasn't anyone out there that we could find that was really adopted it at such a scale that we took it on. So we did very much like Alex said. We set up trials within our own workplaces, and we did a number of scenarios with the Joint Health and Safety Committee team. We basically mimicked uh, incidents that we had within our workplace and tried to replicate them with utilizing the technology and see if it would help. And we ended up landing on the proximity detection system that we currently have implemented across all of our areas. And myself personally, I've hosted a number of different organizations, companies that come to look at it, to understand it, and we're very transparent as what works and what doesn't work. And I think Millan said it right. We have a simple system, and that's what it was available at the time, and it's served us well to this point for sure.
Thanks, Bill. And I think that's a great, your point about replicating near misses and see if it would actually alerted and prevented it. That's a great way to think about it and a great way to do some trialing. So that's terrific. Milan, any further insight to add to the?
Well, similar path. There's not a lot underground mine, so open pit mine are different. They're using different technology that doesn't work underground. Tunnel is difficult for radio frequency, but we decided to go with a simple detection first and build from that. And I'm being involved in this advanced proximity detection since 2019 with with the chosen supplier, and we were following them or helping them doing some trial. We even went to their lab mine in Europe, in Northern Europe, and tested there. And what we did is we had people from Glencore Zinc from Australia, people from Sudbury, people from Raglan, and even from South America. They didn't join us on the trip, but we exchanged on the result on the test. And it was going good, but not enough for implementation. We waited for another year, and then we did some trial. I got people from other underground mine in Glencore that came with us last November and November 2023, and 3 weeks ago also from Australia. So we were a host, but we were in a fly-in, fly-out mine, so bring people from outside is a bit more difficult. Um, Early adopter like Eldorado, like Vale, and we had to work with the supplier to adapt their technology to our needs. That's our path.
Yeah, no, perfect. And I think, and it can be corrected as we go along, but I think today there is the ability to go out and see at different sites where proximity detection is being used. It's more frequent. But I think the collision avoidance aspect of it will be more still some trialing to go on because there's not as much currently out in the industry. So, for those that are out there, definitely if you're looking at the first stages of proximity detection, you should be able to go visit sites that have these in use and get an understanding and talk to experts like we have on the line or that are at other sites. So I mean, part of it is the experts and understanding how it's used, but I think another big part of this is the operators and how does it land with the operators? What are some of the concerns they have because they're the ones that are in the cabs they're behind these pieces of equipment for 10 to 12 hours a day and have to deal with it and deal with the distractions, the benefits that it provide. And so Bill, maybe I'll turn this one over to you from your experience in this implementing of this technology, how has the workforce responded, or what are some of the positives or negatives you've seen with workforce as far as this technology?
Okay, thanks. Yeah, for us at Vale, so like I said, we've been doing this since 2016, and we started at Coleman, the mine that you referred to earlier. So we had a couple incidents at the plant, so that kind of led the whole workforce to kind of rally around getting better at how we interacted with mobile vehicles and people within the workplace. So we had a bit of momentum behind us, some wind into our sails, if you will. So we did some improvements with lighting, with cameras on equipment, with ramp protocols and stuff, and then we eventually rolled into this proximity detection. We had used the Genetec product before at Coleman in little small pockets, so there was some kind of understanding, if you will, of the product from the workforce, and we had full support from leadership and the Joint Health and Safety Committee. So we had that pushing us along as well as we tried to move forward. We took a staged approach to it. We did it in 3 phases. And as we rolled out the phases, we did workshops with the employees. I personally would go down, we work with them in the cabs, we figure out where they wanted stuff placed. Because like to Millan said, we were trailblazing. Nobody had done this before that we knew about, to where we could place the screens and how the screens be placed. So certainly we got a lot of buy-in from them that way. We did things like we actually made it part of our family day. We created like an Easter egg hunt where the kids would walk around with little proximity screens and find basically their father's cap lamp or mother's cap lamp, and we tried to bring it home, right? So it was all about stickers made that said, "This is how your parents are coming home safe." So we really tried to sell it in the workforce. I don't know if I'm a great salesman, but I might have worked. I'm not sure. We did that, but certainly with implementing it, you get the two sides, right? You get the detractors that are, it's just, oh, you're spying on me, which we don't. It's not part of that. So we got that. We got the, it's creating another screen in my view. So we worked really hard to try to design it so it was within the peripheral, but it wasn't staring at them in the face, so they could be alerted. We tailored some alerts for some of the Karoon operators and stuff like that on our main ramps, where they were struggling with that as well. And then really it was around, trying to sell it out there. So those are the detractors. For the people that are really positive, I think like Alex said, the people in the ore body scoop operators, they were all on board with this because it now gave them another level of confidence, that they knew that maybe someone wasn't following the ramp protocol or failed to call in, but now they knew that they were in their work area. And like they said, they're doing that same route 60 times a day. Yeah, they want to make sure that if someone's coming in, they can see that. So we got a lot of buy-in from them on that side of it all. The system has been in place for like 8 years. We have it at all of our plants. There's probably over 1,000 units with this installed. Certainly it's getting old, I think, to some of the operators, and we're looking to refresh it. But for the most part, the feedback has been pretty positive, I think, for the most part.
Thanks, Bill. And it's great to see that the feedback's positive. I like what you said about sort of 3 stages of implementation, starting about how it lands in the cab and and getting to the operators before you're actually using it to see how it impacts their workplace, which is the cab for, like I said, 10 to 12 hours of their day.
Yeah, and the one other thing we get is the maintenance side of it all as well. So we, like Alex said, it's a no-go. If the thing doesn't work, we stop the equipment. So whenever something stops an operator, we know how the mining industry is. It's a lot of go, 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 get their work done. So that does tend to detract from it a little bit and become a bit of but we do our best to stay on top of it. Our maintenance teams have JAWS units in their Jeeps with them. They're ready to change them in the field as they need them. And we've been working hard with the suppliers to make them more robust and reliable. So we've been really trying to target that as well. So.
Okay, great. Alex, Millan, the workforce at your sites, or how it's been going, any thoughts or comments you want to add in?
Yes, for sure. The workers are the one that they are the most impacted by the new things that we put in their cab. So the buzzer with the screen, with the lights. So on our side, we bring them at the table also. Like Bill say, where we want it, where you want the screen. Uh, if they are involved, they will be more accept. They will accept more the technology because they were part of the implementing of the technology. So that's is the most impact is the worker. So how they can have more acceptability is by bring them and involve them in the project.
Thanks, Alex.
Yeah, similar for us. We were working with the union representative. They were the driver, and even the president of the union representative had 20 years ago. He got hit by a loader and heavily injured. Was in the hospital for 6 months. So he was easy to convince. But he was a driver and trying the technology. So it was an easy sell for him. During the trial underground, we had the union, the mine manager, the health and safety department in there, and even they the health and safety or prevention team brought an idea that we didn't think of it on the technical side or as an engineer. That's it's them who suggest to work with an ergonomic consultant, and we thought initially, maybe it's about putting the tablet where you're going to put it in the cabin, but it wasn't. That's a small part. That might be 15% of the job. The biggest job was how we're going to inform the driver without overwhelming the driver with too much information. Again, as a technical guy, you want to tell them, well, there's someone on the right. You want someone is in the green zone, yellow, red, and it's beeping too many times. So we need to narrow that to simple instruction, and only if it's a critical. So there's some, how should I say that? That some notification to that are not too invasive, to so you're alert or there's someone around you, and then it only beep loudly if it's really in the red zone for a pedestrian, not necessarily a vehicle. So there's some bit of science that as an engineer we don't think about that. And again, that's involving all the stakeholders and taking their idea, because if that's not something from the technical team, that was a suggestion from the prevention team.
That's a great point, Millan. And I think this technology will continue to advance, right? To the point now where even if both vehicles are going in the same direction and it's in the zone, it's a different alerting mechanism than if they were both going towards one another. And I think that's where it needs to go to, so you don't get as many of these distractions. I mean, one of the other things to me that I think is important is, we always think, when's the project approved? And is it when, the budget's been approved for it? Is when the PO has been approved, when it's in? If you think about approval, it's when there's full acceptance from the operation. Like that's when the project's done. And even at that point in time, you still got to monitor and see how it's going. And so you just can't think of, okay, we're done now, it's good. It's an ongoing change technology that needs to be managed. And needs to be managed well. So before we get into our last question, I just want to remind the audience, type in any questions you have. We want to make sure that we're meeting your needs, we're answering questions we have so that you can figure out what you need for this technology, what you need to do to help advance your mine or your industry towards the journey to safety. So please feel free to type them in. We've got a few in there now, but love to have a few more. And as we get into this last question before we go to the audience, I think I'll turn it over to each one of you. You've gone through an implementation and you've discussed some of that, but if you were sitting in the audience right now, what were some of the things that you'd want your presenters, your panelists to tell about the successes you had at your implementation or some of the challenges you had? Please share, with each of you, what were some of the things you think are critical to pass along, whether it be a success or something you would change in your implementation. Let's do the same order, Millan. I'll start with you.
Yeah, well, that's not an easy question to answer. Set some standard of, okay, one thing is, how do you test the performance of detection? And we build it over time based on our sample detection and then with our experience. And we came up with 25 scenario, but we cannot try again 25 scenario with every vehicle and every supplier. And from that, we narrow it to 3 critical scenarios. So that if you fail in those scenarios, you will fail on others. So it would be nice to have a standard in the industry of what scenario and how we can compare different supplier. I think that's one point on the technical side. And I come back with the ergonomic point. There's some ISO standard also, and regardless of your supplier, the way we're going to notify the driver will be the same, or should be the same, and could be applied with supplier A, B, or C. It would be nice to have that standard out also. That's what I would summarize it. I'll leave
Thanks,
to the
Bob.
other few things.
Alex?
Yes, for our side is all same thing that Millan. It's a tough question, but we I think a good risk analysis is really important at the beginning of the project, and with the director need also to be faced with the risk analysis because got so much things, and you can go they you can go whatever you want with this, but you need to know where you want to start, where you want to end, and the timeline is pretty hard with the installation also on the equipment to stop all the equipment on the production. It's a big change management. It's a big change management. You need to have and we were like a pretty new mine also, so we don't have a big change management system at this time, but we learn a lot about implementing the technology at this time. And in 2017, the technology was just getting quickly. At this point, it was the good one. Now is it the good one? So it's always you need to add this in your risk, and you need to collect data from the operator after you implement to be sure to find solution to help them to get better experience also, and work with the supplier. The supplier is you need to work with them a lot to get everything well for the operator at the end of the day.
Bill?
Sorry, I was having trouble with my mute button. I knew I'd be the guy. Anyways, so yeah, I like both Millan and Alexandre for sure. You know, the implementation is massive to try to get it in with the MOC and doing that risk assessment. I think Millan spoke earlier about having a vision or having an idea of where you're going. For us, when we took it on, it was very, very, you know, we just wanted to understand what was going on around you, not really having that vision to see what the future was. So having a system that you can expand upon would be huge, because for us, for example, we have it installed on 1,000 vehicles, probably a couple thousand cap lamps now has this installed. So to do a change, to go to something else, we really have to make sure that it's the right system to take on. So I would look for something that could be certainly expanded upon. For us, what we found with the technology is to make sure it's robust for us in the workplace. We have, you know, with it being exposed to the environments, with open cab equipment, cold, hot, coming out of the ramp, stuff like that. Certainly you want something more than just a little Android tablet on a RAM mount. You need something that can really hold up, and we're learning that as we went through the system. Making sure it's agnostic is huge. And then the other one that we thought was a benefit to us when we rolled it out was making sure that it didn't have to rely on Wi-Fi or LTE to do its basic function. We wanted to be able to speak peer-to-peer without having to rely on infrastructure with around the mine, because at the end of the day, it's all about protecting the people. So we felt that was really important for us to just, it needs to be able to talk to one another rather than worrying about being so integrated into it. Those are all great things to expand upon. We get some more data, but certainly that was a big piece for us as well that I would think would be important for anyone that rolls it out.
Thanks, Bill. And so we'll take to the questions now. And one of the questions was what systems are out there. Bill, you mentioned your experience with Janitech and the JAWS systems. Maybe Millan, and then Alex, just quickly, what systems are you using at Glencore and Eldorado, if you don't mind?
Yeah, at Ryan, we're working with Nutrax. It's part of Sandvik, so with the Sandvik system, and it's embedded with the telemetry system and the. So we're doing both. When you're installing telemetry, you're installing proximity detection, you're installing also your communication for location. So we were working with Nutrax / Sandvik.
On our side, we were with we are with the MegLab and Imagine system. MegLab not part of Epiroc.
And that's one
Maybe
of the
one thing,
things.
John.
Yeah,
John, look, Alexandre, you were working with MegLab, which is in your yard, not very far from your mine. Bill from Janatech is in Sudbury, it's in your yard. For us, Nutrax is in Montreal. I can take my bicycle and just ride to their office. So when there's a problem, you want that local support. I think the key, we all talk about working with a supplier, is working with a supplier that can give you the support quickly. I think that's the key more than just the technology.
no, perfect. That's great point. And as I was going to say, we've got three different companies, three different suppliers, and by means we're not trying to sell anything. I think it's important just to look at the technology and see what's out there and figure out how we implement some of this within our business. One of the other questions we have is, now that these proximity detections or collision avoidance are in there, does it create compliancy or complacency in the operators where they're not looking out as much, they're not as observing as much of what's going on? What have you seen? What have you found? Or anything you could share on that point?
This was part of our risk analysis. If the worker will continue to look all around the machine, or they will just look at the screen, and I've got a screen, it's all right. But no, we at the beginning was quite an issue about this. We tell them you must look all around, because each people got their cab lamp and they should look at the surface if the tag is running. But if you got an issue, if the worker got a problem with his tag on the ground, and he won't be seen by the system. So the operator of the machine need to continue to look all around and be so.
Perfect. Thanks, Alex. We had another question in here.
Yeah.
Um,
Do you want me, John? Just
oh, sure.
Alexandre is right, and also I just want to add the technology is an additional safety net, but without that, how should I say that? If you only focus on your technology, the technology will address about 25% of your near misses. 75 are on your basic control, your design of the mine, the way your machine works, your pre-op test, are you fit to drive? You're driving at 100 kilometer per hour underground. Even if you have a collision avoidance system, it won't work. You're just going too fast. I dare someone to be able to drive at that speed, but I'm just giving an example. But yes, it's a risk that driver just rely on that technology. And how many people saw had an accident just looking at your backup camera and broke a mirror or hit something from the blind spot of the backing up camera? So I can give that example also. You cannot just rely on the camera.
No, thanks, Mark. And you mentioned the technology. It leads into another question now, sort of saying, do you think that there'll be a move beyond just using radio and RFID, like going from tag to tag or system to system, where it'll be a different technology that'll be used in the future to look at these threats and these proximities? And I know there's already technology out there that's using that type of, Lupex is one of them. There's a few others that's using that technology to sort of put it on a piece of equipment, and it goes out and sees what's around it from that point without having to get a read back from another tag. I'm not sure if you saw that in your trials, but yeah, to that question, there is different technologies that are out there and being implemented now
Yeah.
as far as how that works.
The problem,
Next
I
question.
can maybe say something on that, is I think it's a combination. I've seen actually Sandvik is working on something like that to combine both that and the teleop technology, the LiDAR, the 3D LiDAR, for example. The problem with the LiDAR is it cannot see around the corner, where peer-to-peer with radio frequency, you can detect someone at 90 degrees around the corner. So will that replace it? No, it will work together to have one day teleop equipment and pedestrian in the same zone. I think that's the ultimate goal, or ultimately is having a fully autonomous mine and nobody goes on the ground. Is it possible? You still need to change a bit, grease your machine, put some fuel in it, but yeah.
Next question, and we talked about sort of operator, the tablets, what's in the cabs, but the operator user interface, how important is that? And are either the three of you aware of any standards that are being developed for these user interfaces in the industry? I know GMG is doing some work with autonomous systems and others, but any experience from you three about the user interface and standards being created?
Yeah, from our side, there was no standard created at the time. I'm sure there are now. Our struggle with interfaces within the cab was the size of them. So we went from a small little tablet for the first iteration of the Jantech product to now it just seems to be creeping larger and larger. So certainly when you're taking into consideration what platform you use, you really got to take into consideration the room that's in the cab and the amount of space it's going to take. Interacting with it from us, they just look at it. There's no real buttons to push for us, but yeah.
Okay.
On
All right.
our
Sounds
side,
like
our standard was more on the display himself. We wanna be like, we put some colors like yellow and red when you get the for the warning zone and the danger zone. So we want to be that it's easy for the operator to see what happens, and right in his sight when he drove. So you don't have to look at the back when you go front, and so we put it in the middle, so he's able to keep an eye on it.
We're using three-way to notify the driver. First is a sound notification. And when you concentrate, you hear a sound, okay, there's something. Then you have external light with, like Tom is saying, with different color based on our procedure. 30 meter in the ramp, 15 meter, you need to notify the driver if a pedestrian wants to approach, and 7 meter, the vehicle must be on parking brake if you want to get closer to the machine. So three notification. One sound, then external light, like you're seeing the flashing there, red, and it's flashing different pulse. And then the tablet. The tablet for us is the ultimate, where it gives you the orientation and distance. But you cannot look at 63-ton truck, when you're driving that, you cannot look at the tablet and driving at 10 kilometer per hour. You're using that sound, that external light, you slow down, you stop, then you look at the tablet.
perfect. Move to the next one. And this is a little bit about regulation. And I know the last safety share was on BEVs, and there was talk about BEV regulation. What's the future look like? If we look to proximity detection, collision avoidance, what's your experience with regulatory regulations out there? And I'll give you mine, and I'm looking for any updates to them. But in Ontario, they've got traffic management plans that are required, but not prescriptive on having this technology in those traffic management plans. I think South Africa now is at a point where it's mandatory through regulation. But what have you seen, and any take on regulations in your area in Quebec, or anything you've heard about potentially in the future?
And for now in Quebec, it is not a regulation. We kind of talk about it, but we understand it's just, first of all, it's not, there's not enough mine using it. It's a very heavy project to deploy, to test, choose your right supplier and deploy it on a large fleet. I think it's good practice, but not necessarily a regulation. If you do that, how do you say that? The consequences in financially and effort for each mine will be very high. I don't know, Alexandre, do you have anything else to add on that?
No, you got right. You got any regulation on that. The CNASST is not on this case for now, and it's a good it's a good way to prevent an incident, but no regulation.
Next question. Have you seen a lot of differences in technology between the different suppliers? And obviously, most of you are using one supplier now. I think one of you have tests on the go, but are there differences you've seen in technologies? And before I go to answers, and Bill, maybe I'll start with you because I think you're doing some different testing at Vale. One of the things I would put out there, and it's not a plug for any suppliers, but the suppliers can present what their technology does, what it's like. And so definitely reach out to them, get some presentations of their different ones, and they can set you up. But I do believe there's differences. Bill, your thoughts?
Yeah, certainly the technology that we currently have, like the JAWS product we have, is obviously quite old. It's the simple system. We've been presented with different opportunities through everyone from Caterpillar. We've seen the Nutrax platform and stuff like that to see. And what's encouraging is we see that evolution where now they're saying they could get to the level 9 and stuff like that. And that's where we'd like to go with it. From our side, again, we're looking for that platform that we can deploy across the whole division and be able to make something work. So right now we tried last year, we had some RFQs out last year. We did some collision avoiding testing at Garson Mine. We did some initial testing. It came back as really struggling to control the vehicle was really the feedback we got, and a lot of nuisance alarms and not being able to really identify, especially around the corners and stuff like that. But we're certainly encouraged with some of the testing, and I believe I'm going to be reaching out to both of my colleagues here and trying to get some feedback on what they're experiencing with their technology. So.
Alex.
When we started the project at the beginning, we tested. At this time, it was like we've got two technology of detection. One was the nanotron with the time of flight. So it's a time between they are pulling between the two devices. So you can reach a pretty higher resolution of how is at 5 meters, at 10 meters, 7 meters, is at 50 meters. And the other one was the radio frequency technology. This type of technology underground is pretty hard to have a great data because of the bouncing through the walls, and that's why we went with the nanotron. But now the nanotron is used by pretty much of the company in detection, and it's quite a better technology also.
All right, thanks, Alex. We're going to get to the last question, and Michelle's put me on the spot here because there's two questions left, both from different mentors of mine. So, Brian, I'm sorry, I'm going to skip yours. We'll get an email out to you. But John, here's his question. It says, very good presentation, but if you had to give a ballpark, what's the time frame for implementing a technology like this from when you start to when it's, we'll say, functioning and working your operation? So just a quick roundtable. How many months think you're looking at? Millan?
Well, for us, it's taking about 2 shifts, 2 guys to do an installation. So depending on how many vehicles you have and how quick you can pull it from your operation, and do you have a dedicated service bay? We do, that help us. But if you have to fight with your maintenance team, it can take forever. So my suggestion, have a service bay dedicated for that. For us, plan 2 day, and depending on your 2 shift, depending on your fleet size. 200
Alex, what do you
vehicle for
think?
us, it's 400 shift, and that's without stopping. And that's when you have the material, all your tests, all your risk analysis, all your. So it's
That's what.
easily 4 years. I'll
That's
say easily
so. Just
4 years.
without the description, give a time frame, Alex and Bill, because we're going to turn over to Michelle. What are we talking about? Months or years?
Well, it takes 2 years for us to.
Bill,
Yeah, two. I would say 2 years for sure. It's a year to trial, 6 months to trial, and a long time to install for sure.
Michelle, over to you.
Okay, thank you, John. And thank you to our panelists, Millan, Alexandre, and Bill. Also, a special thank you to Dundee Precious Metals for sponsoring today's episode of the Safety Share. I'd like to thank all of our attendees and ask that you please fill out the short survey that pops up on your screen at the end of the webinar. A link to the video recording of this webinar will be emailed to you tomorrow. Stay tuned to the CIM calendar of events on CIM.org for season 3 of the Safety Share. We hope to see you at the next one, and we'd like you to enjoy the rest of your day, and happy holidays to everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
All right, thanks.